Welcome back. Cool fall day here in Ohio. Finally getting another chance to work on my engine. It seems like I've only been able to work on it about one day a month, or maybe 2 days, but each of those days is not a full day. It ends up being, 4 or 5 hours once or twice a month. That's why it's taking so long. But today I'm going to try to get the heads on the engine. They've been boxed up for a long time waiting to be bolted on. And I have an intake, the one I got with my original set of heads, the set of heads where one turned out to be cracked. I've got that intake ready to bolt on. But that intake, I don't really know what it is. It doesn't have any markings on it whatsoever. It is a dual plane, kind of a mid-rise. I've been told that that probably it is a Chinese knockoff, which doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad intake, but as I've gone through this engine build, it's kind of changed as far as it was originally going to be a mild build, and then I started wanting to hot rod it and make a stroker. So I decided I wanted to upgrade the intake a little bit. I'll save that other one for some other project, maybe a truck engine or something. So I've got an Edelbrock RPM air gap. Maybe you've seen it in the box in the background of some of the other videos. And I know most people leave them just natural like this, but I've got it taped up and I've got some plugs in the holes. And I'm actually going to paint it to Chevy orange like I did my previous intake. It's going to be a little more difficult to get underneath, to paint it in underneath where this air gap is, but we're going to give it a try and see what we can do. And once I get a coat of paint on that, it'll take 30 minutes to flash. While that's going on, I'll get my heads out and start putting a couple springs on for checking the valve to piston clearance. But let's get started and see what the day brings. So one of the things I've got to do is check my piston to valve clearance. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take off these springs and replace them with a set of checking springs that are lightweight, so I can roll the engine over, and these will compress very easily because I do have hydraulic flat tappet lifters. So anyway, that's what we're going to do. We're going to get the spring compressor out, take these springs off, and put on a lightweight checking spring. Okay, I'm going to clean off the top of the piston with a little denatured alcohol because I want my Play-Doh to stick to the piston. And then I will actually put a little WD-40 on the valves so that the clay does not stick to the valves. What I'm using is just good old Play-Doh. You can probably get that from your kids and put it back and they'll never know the difference. Just going to take and put some on each of those valve reliefs. Got a head gasket here, just a cheap one that I'm going to use for this. It's about the same thickness as the final gasket that I'm going to use. Got the head on and snugged down. Now I got to get my rocker arms, push rods, and lifters in. I had that long sleeve shirt on because I thought I was going to go out there and start painting. And it's a little cool outside, so I've actually got an electric heater underneath warming that intake up before I paint it. These lifters have been soaking forever in this break-in oil. They've been moved around enough that there shouldn't be any air bubbles left in them. I'm going to have to go find my push rods. This will also be a good time to check push rod length. I'm going to get a new set of hardened push rods for this engine, but I need to check the length before I order those. Okay, I've got 2 sets of push rods here. One set came off the original 350 block that I tore down with those other heads. The second set came from another set of Vortec heads that I bought locally off of a guy. They rolled the pickup truck and junked it, and the only thing they kept were the Vortec heads. And I got those for not very much money, so I've got them stored away for some future project. But looking at the two, there's about 3/4 of an inch difference in length. The ones that came with the Vortec heads are shorter, and doing my research, it appears that it's not so much the difference in the heads, but the difference in the lifters. The Vortec head had a roller lifter, which is taller. So anyway, I believe I need to use the longer ones that came on the original 350 block with the other set of heads. I do have a push rod checker here. Somewhere I also have one of the variable length push rod checkers that I will be using to check my final dimension. But for what I'm doing now, I'm going to try the longer push rod and then use this to make sure I have the correct angle, geometry angle. I think I need to take that down off that can up. got that down off the cam lobe now. Alright, I was using this geometry checker, and it looked like I was really off, but what I forgot to take into account is this lifter for this valve was up, and to check that geometry you want that down on the base circle. And when I put this on now, it is setting flat against the top of the valve and also flat against the top of the push rod. So those are the correct push rods. And now that I have both lifters on the base circle, I can go ahead and put these rockers on and adjust my lash. I have Iski roller tip rockers. They do have a long slot and a 1.5 ratio. Now that I've got the zero lash with it on the base circle, I'm going to give it about a half a turn. Got my push rods in, my rocker arms on and adjusted, and now I'm going to just bar the engine over. I'm going to bar it over probably twice, 2 complete revolutions, just to make sure I get a good mark in that Play-Doh. Okay, there's 1 complete revolution. And there's my 2nd complete revolution. So now I can take everything back off and check my piston to valve clearance. I'm not expecting any issues, but I just want to be 100% certain. Put this Play-Doh on there and I barred the engine over, and now I can check my piston to valve clearance, which I can tell before I even cut and remove this that I've got plenty, but want to know for sure. On the exhaust, I've got 150 thousandths. Using permatex thread sealant on these head studs that go into the water jackets. These are ARP head studs. I'll get them both in, then I'll wipe off the excess. Using Chromatic multi-layer steel head gaskets. There is no top or bottom or left or right. They work either way. Get the rest of my head studs in, and then we'll set some heads on. Okay, I've got all my head studs in, and I'm getting ready. I've got my gasket on, and I'm getting ready to set my head on. If this fly that's buzzing around isn't careful, he's going to end up inside the engine. Wow, that went on much easier than I was expecting. I was expecting to have some issues with that going down, but that went on just fine. I think I'm going to let that set there. Get the rest of my head studs in on this side and get that head on, and then I can lube and torque everything down at the same time. Just kind of wiggle it. Get our fingers pinched. I got it. It's on.
Okay.
We put 2 nuts just so if it were to rotate it wouldn't fall off.
Mm-hmm.
If you go out there and look, you'll see it's still wet, but the intake manifold that goes on top.
Okay.
I just painted it today.
Yeah, I saw that when we pulled in.
I almost messed up big time. Set this head on here, and I still had the checking springs on it, so I did pull it back off and put the springs back on that belonged on there. Next thing I've got to do is get the ARP lube on all the bolts or all the studs and the nuts and the washers, and then we'll be ready to torque this down. I'm going to start torquing these down. These ARP head studs torqued to 80 foot-pounds, and I'm going to do that in 3 intervals. I'm going to start with 30 and then probably go to 55 and then to 80. You can look up the torque sequence online. Pretty much it's starting in the center and then working towards the outside edge of the head. So from the center out in a clockwise circular pattern. This is the final pass at 80 foot-pounds.